So I recently found myself on Keep Trade Cut the other day. I was looking at player values, kind of seeing who's been trending up and who's been trending down, but I found something that was kind of concerning. And I saw that these rookies in this 2024 rookie class, there's a couple guys specifically. I have three of them: Jayden Daniels, Brock Bowers, and Malik Nabers. I think all of these players are currently being valued close to their ceiling, and I don't know if there's much room for them to increase in value as the 2024 season goes on. So I wanted to talk about these guys. I think that there's an argument that this is a selling point for these players. And I hate to tell you guys to sell some rookies right after you drafted them, but the value right now for what they are being traded for is just too high. I have a couple trade examples. We'll talk about the projected outcomes for these guys, but that is what we're going to be talking about today. So make sure you buckle in. This is a little bit more of a think piece. So maybe just to get your mind running to see if you do want to consider selling some of these rookies. But without wasting any more time, let's tuck those shirts in and let's get into today's video. All right, so the first player that I want to talk about is going to be Jayden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. And you guys know he was picked round 1, pick 2 by the Commanders. He's going into this offense here to go play with offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, new head coach Dan Quinn. I think that there's been some comparisons to Kyler Murray, to Lamar Jackson, to some of these rushing quarterbacks, because that is what people like about Jayden Daniels. They like the rushing upside. It screams fantasy football points. You've even seen some comparisons to Justin Fields as well. So let's talk about where he's being valued right now. We'll pull it up on the screen. Over the last 3 months, Jayden Daniels has consistently seen an increase in his value. He came in, started at about 5,704 KTC. He is now at 6,631 KTC. And this is funny to me because I feel like nothing has really changed with Jayden Daniels over the last couple months. Most of us have presumed that he was going to be the number 2 pick overall to the Washington Commanders, and he did become the number 2 overall pick. So there really isn't anything that has changed. I guess just people have started to get a little bit more familiar with Jayden Daniels, and now people are getting higher. But you see, he is currently the QB 12 on Keep Trade Cut, being valued as a quarterback 1 right now in the market. Now let's pull up the value adjacent quarterbacks, because you see the guys that he is being valued in the same tier with. QB 9 right there: Anthony Richardson, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, Jayden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy, and Drake May. This is kind of the bunch that Jayden Daniels has found himself in between, and he's actually being valued very similarly to Anthony Richardson, Jordan Love, and Kyler Murray specifically. Now, I do have a couple of trades that I want to talk about. We can kind of show what he has been traded for in the last couple of days. We pulled these trades from Dynasty Daddy. So if you guys want to use that tool, great tool to see trades for players in specific leagues. You just go to the trade database. But this is a trade that has happened today, and I'm recording this on Monday, May 6th. So just a couple days before this is actually going to come out. But Jayden Daniels was traded in a Superflex League, 12-team, start 11, full PPR for Joe Burrow. Now, I think this is interesting because Joe Burrow is somebody that we all value as one of the top players at the quarterback position in our Superflex Leagues. He is always a first-round startup pick, and Jayden Daniels right now is being traded straight across the board for him. Now, Joe Burrow, he's been averaging 18.85 fantasy points per game over his career. Obviously, a couple injuries last year he was playing through, so that did hurt his fantasy points per game numbers a little bit. But it's hard to imagine that Jayden Daniels right away is going to be as valuable as a guy like Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, we know he's safe. We know he's going to give you that high production. And I know that you could argue the age of Jayden Daniels and Joe Burrow as potentially a reason why you might want Jayden Daniels. But in a dynasty league, Joe Burrow is not old. He's not somebody that I feel like is going to be retiring in the next 3 to 5 years. So it really doesn't matter for me anyways. I just feel like this is a very clear type of sell for me if you can get a guy like Joe Burrow for Jayden Daniels, for people that are buying in on the rushing upside, on the hype, because the range of outcomes for Jayden Daniels is very wide. He could be very good. He could be very bad. But we know that Joe Burrow is going to be good. And that's kind of the premise of today's video. So let's look at the next trade here. 3 days ago, you have the same type of idea. 10-team league this time. Start 10, full PPR. Same thing, 0.5 tight end premium. Now you have Jayden Daniels being packaged with Zamir White, who obviously is a little bit of a winner from the NFL draft. No added competition other than Alexander Madison in free agency, and I guess Dylan Lawabe in the late rounds. So interesting to see what happens with Zamir White. But then you have Michael Mayer, a big loser in the draft as well. So Jayden Daniels in that package being traded for Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts, over the last 3 years as the starter in Philadelphia, 22.96 fantasy points per game. That's up there with Josh Allen. That's up there ahead of Patrick Mahomes. He has been absolutely dominant for our fantasy football teams. And I would argue that the absolute ceiling for a guy like Jayden Daniels would be on that same trajectory of a guy like Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Hurts, obviously not very old either, a guy who's like 25, 26 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And he just got both of his wide receivers added on extensions, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown. I think this is an absolute sell for Jayden Daniels. You get that type of ceiling from a guy like Jalen Hurts. And if this is the market, which it does seem like on Keep Trade Cut and in these Dynasty Daddy trades, that this is actually something that you can do in your leagues. If you can get somebody to bite, give me the Jalen Hurts side every time. And then one more trade here for Jayden Daniels. This one's a little bit different because we're getting into a little bit of a different tier of quarterback. But 4 days ago here, you have Jayden Daniels being traded for Jordan Love, Adam Thielen, and a 2026 fourth-round pick. So for me, Adam Thielen, the fourth-round pick, they don't mean much. I don't really care about those either. But I even think that this is an interesting conversation when you talk about Jayden Daniels and Jordan Love. Because last year, as a starter in Green Bay, Jordan Love averaged 19.4 fantasy points per game. So that was better than Joe Burrow has been for his career average so far. Now, obviously a smaller sample size, but that tells you the type of ceiling that Jordan Love has, and we have seen him do it at the NFL level already. We have not seen Jayden Daniels do this. If Jayden Daniels hits, maybe he outproduces a guy like Jordan Love because of the rushing upside, but we know what Jordan Love is. We know that he's very young as well, not necessarily a guy that is going to be older for your Dynasty Fantasy Football team, so you're not buying a bunch of age when you make a move like this either. Same type of situation, but I think that there's an argument that you lean the Jordan Love side here as well. So definitely something worth monitoring with Jayden Daniels' value. And that's kind of why I figured that he is somebody that we might consider trading at his current cost because he is being valued almost at the ceiling right now. Now, moving on to our next player here, we are going to talk about Malik Nabers. He is currently being valued as the wide receiver 9, started at 5,833 KTC. He has consistently risen until he's gotten to this point where he is right now at 6,617 KTC. And I think the sentiment for Malik Nabers right now is that after he has been drafted the number 6 overall by the New York Giants, that a lot of people aren't necessarily in on the landing spot with Daniel Jones being the quarterback. And I know we got a lot of people on the channel that like Daniel Jones. They say that we're going to regret fading Daniel Jones. But look, that's kind of the public perception of what the New York Giants landing spot is. And so it's interesting to me to kind of see him increase in value as we get a little bit later into that May type of range. Now, he may have a little bit of a dip as well. I think Malik Nabers, his career is kind of going to follow a similar path. So let's bring up the Drake London value over the last 12 months because Drake London, a player that we were very high on, a very good wide receiver prospect, he goes to a situation where the quarterback situation was not good. He wasn't getting good quarterback play. And look at the dip that we saw in Drake London over the last 12 months. You see, it was about August where he was pretty high, almost similarly to where he is right now. But then we had that major dip, and he kind of sat in that valley there for a while during the season. Then he sparked his way back up, obviously, when Kirk Cousins comes to town. But I do think that Malik Nabers is going to follow a similar path. And this is not me saying that Malik Nabers is not talented. I think he is a very talented wide receiver, still my wide receiver 2 in the class. But if he does follow that similar pathway, it's hard to argue that this is not a sell high point for Malik Nabers right now, being valued as the wide receiver 9. Now, the value adjacent wide receivers that he has in the similar range as him, you have wide receiver 6 here. That's Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, Chris Olave, Drake London, and Rome Odunze. Now, Rome Odunze, he's another guy that might be a sell high, but I do think that those 3 spots in value do change it just a tiny bit for me, but maybe Rome Odunze is a sell as well. But we'll keep talking about Malik Nabers. Let's show some trades that have happened in leagues right now. We'll pull this one up from 5 days ago. Superflex League, 10 teams, start 10, full PPR, a 1 tight end premium. So you have Amon-Ra St. Brown being traded for Malik Nabers and Bo Nix. And I know we had Bo Nix go top 12. This is a guy who got very good draft capital, better than what we expected. But in a 10-team league, that quarterback is most likely not going to have as much value as a 12-team league. Now, it's not going to be crazy different, but it is going to be worth noting that it's not as valuable in that 10-team league, especially a guy like Bo Nix who has very limited rushing upside, has very limited type of big playability. I think he's going to be more of a quarterback 2 for most teams. But Malik Nabers and Bo Nix being traded for Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy who we deem as an S-tier wide receiver, or at least I deem as an S-tier wide receiver. I think he's in the same conversation as guys like Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb. And you look at the career fantasy points per game for Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's averaged 16.93 fantasy points per game over the course of his career, and he's consistently gotten better and better every single year. Last year being a career best for him. We know that he obviously just got a bag of money to be extended there in Detroit, but it's hard for me to look at this type of risk on that right side of the trade. Malik Nabers, Bo Nix. We don't really know what either of those guys are going to be. We think we know what they could be. We have hope that they could become big time starters for our dynasty teams, but we know Amon-Ra St. Brown is a superstar. I feel like in a 10-team league, start 10 type of format, give me that hammer wide receiver every time. And this is a real trade that has happened in a real league. So something that I would definitely be looking to do if I have Malik Nabers on my roster. Now, looking at another one here from 2 days ago, we do have A.J. Brown being traded for Malik Nabers and Tyquan Thornton. Now, this type of format is a 12-team league, start 11, full PPR, half-point tight end premium. So in that 12-team start 11, you are going to want a little bit more depth than you do in that 10-team league. But Tyquan Thornton is irrelevant for me in this trade. I do not care about Tyquan Thornton at all. We just talked about A.J. Brown getting that bag, getting another extension to stay here in Philadelphia. Malik Nabers being traded for A.J., we just saw on the value adjacent wide receivers that AJ is being valued higher than Malik Nabers, but you might have somebody who has some hope for Malik, thinks that he can become a superstar, and I'm willing to sell that hope to somebody for the guaranteed production because AJ Brown, over the last 4 years of his career, averaging 16.55 fantasy points per game. I think this is a difference maker for your dynasty rosters, and some people are down on AJ Brown right now. I still think he's a top 5, top 6 type of wide receiver in dynasty circles. Right now being valued as a wide receiver 8. Potentially a sell high on Nabers here and a buy low on A.J. Brown. Definitely something I'm willing to do. And then the last one here, this one's going to be a little bit different because I feel like there is hopium on both sides of these trades. But 2 days ago, Superflex League, 10 teams, start 9, full PPR. So definitely a shallower type of league. So those hammer wide receivers are going to be a little bit more valuable. But you have Garrett Wilson and a 2025 first round pick being traded for Malik Nabers and a 2025 round 3 pick. So this is kind of a different type of move where I'm willing to put the gamble on Garrett Wilson because for most of his career so far, he has had a lot of hopium. He's been a guy that a lot of people wanted to be very great. He hasn't been great yet. And a lot of that is because of the quarterback play. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers hopefully going to be playing quarterback this year for the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is going to be playing quarterback here for the New York Jets. Now, over his career, 12.6 fantasy points per game. It's not groundbreaking, not really anything that's been special. But I do like the fact that you are moving similar assets, Malik Nabers and Garrett Wilson, who I think should both be valued pretty similarly right now. But one side is getting that 2025 first round pick. So you move up 2 rounds in next year's class. Some people are going to knock next year's class right now. They're still going to be good players. That value of that first round pick is still going to increase over time. Not necessarily a pick that you have to make, but you could flip it down the road for more value too. I like the Garrett Wilson and the first round pick side because to me, it's essentially the same bet between Garrett Wilson and Malik Nabers. The difference is we might have better quarterback play for Garrett Wilson this year. Then obviously we don't know long term, but we also don't know long term for Malik Nabers either at that quarterback position. So same bet, but a little bit more value on the Garrett Wilson side. I'm willing to sell it for that type of price. And now the third and final player that I want to talk about is going to be Brock Bowers, tight end for the Las Vegas Raiders. And there isn't necessarily as many trades kind of showing what I think you could do for Brock Bowers, but we'll talk about strategy with Brock Bowers because I still think he is almost being valued at his peak. Currently the tight end 2 in Dynasty Fantasy Football circles. The only guy above him right now is Sam Laporta. So obviously that is a very high value assessment for a guy like Brock Bowers who hasn't played any games yet. And that is not knocking what Brock Bowers is as a prospect. He is a very talented prospect and somebody that I believe in a lot, but it is hard to argue the fact that he is being valued right here and that there may be some moves that you could make to gain an edge on your league mates in your Dynasty Fantasy Football leagues. So let's look at the value adjacent tight ends. Obviously, like I said, Sam Laporta above him, but below him, you have guys like Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, TJ Hawkinson, and Mark Andrews. Now, I think the strategy that I would be taking with Brock Bowers is I would be tearing down and getting extra value thrown in because I do think that there is an argument for guys like Trey McBride, guys like Dalton Kincaid, maybe even guys like Kyle Pitts, depending on how you feel about the Kirk Cousins addition. We've seen how Kirk fed TJ Hawkinson in Minnesota, so maybe that's a similar thing for Kyle Pitts in Atlanta, but it's going to depend on how you feel. But I want to tear down and gain some extra value from there. But even if you are going to move Brock Bowers, it may be worth trading out into a different position, getting a difference maker over there, and then buying back a different tight end at a cheaper price because we know that tight ends necessarily aren't the most expensive assets to go buy in our dynasty leagues. So let's pull up the first trade here. This is going to be a tear down example, and it's probably the only tear down example that we have in a market like this. But if I was tearing down from Brock Bowers, my first choice would be Dalton Kincaid. I will say that. But one day ago, Kyle Pitts and Deshaun Watson being acquired in a Superflex 12-team Start 9 league for Brock Bowers and Adonai Mitchell. Now, obviously, the rookie side, lots of hopium, lots of projection for the players that we want them to become. But we know that Kyle Pitts not necessarily been the most incredible asset for Dynasty leagues. In fact, he's been quite disappointing for most people, but we can kind of blame that on the quarterback play for the most part. So like I said, you kind of got to determine how you feel about Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. But you get Kyle Pitts and Deshaun Watson for Brock Bowers and Adonai Mitchell. You get that tear down at the tight end position, but you turn Adonai, who's going in these 12-team leagues in the mid-second round for the most part, for a guy like Deshaun Watson in a Superflex league. Give me the Deshaun Watson side. That is more valuable to me than Adonai Mitchell, and it just costs you a little bit of a tear down at the tight end position. So definitely something that I would explore. I would use a similar strategy, but I would probably go for a guy like McBride, a guy like Kincaid, maybe even a guy like Mark Andrews, depending on what you could get. But that is something that I would consider for Brock Bowers. But like I said, that is probably the only tear down we will talk about here. Now, there's another example here going cross position. 5 days ago, you have Brock Bowers, a couple second-round picks from 2025 and 2026, and then a 25 third-round pick. Don't really care too much about the 25 third-round pick, but you get Travis Etienne and Brandon Ayuk. So this is a Superflex 10-team league, start 10. Now, you are throwing a couple second-round picks in there, and some people are going to want to hold on to those second-round picks. To me, at this point, if you want to go get a guy like Etienne and you want to get a guy like Ayuk, this tells me that you feel like you're a competitor. You're going to be pushing to make a run at a championship. And you get two guys that we think can be starters and maybe even higher end starters. Travis Etienne, running back 1 numbers potentially. Brandon Ayuk, low end wide receiver 1, maybe high end wide receiver 2 numbers this year for the San Francisco 49ers, presumably. But you go get those two guys, you add them to your roster, and then like I said, you can go buy another tight end later, or maybe you already have a tight end on your bench like Evan Engram, who's going to score some points in 2024. I like this type of move if you want to go cross position and gain some extra value, because there is more value to me on that Etienne and that Ayuk side. And then the third and final trade here, this is going to be from 2 days ago, a Superflex 12-team start 10 full PPR league. You move Brock Bowers, you get Drake London and a 2025 first-round pick. It's a no-brainer. This is probably something that is not necessarily feasible for your leagues for the most part, but if you can get something like this, I mean, by all means necessary, because I was talking about this on a stream the other night. We were doing a stream on the League FFB channel, our Let's Talk Dynasty show, and what we were talking about was, where would Drake London be in this wide receiver class, knowing the landing spots now? Would you consider Drake London over Malik Nabers? Would you consider him over Rome Odunze? I think that there's an argument that Drake London would be the 103 in this year's class, just behind Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison, if we knew what we knew today. Now, that being said, you get Brock Bowers. He's obviously not going at the 103. You get a 2025 first-round pick thrown in as well. I think it's a no-brainer. If you can make a move like this, by all means, go do it. But you got to have somebody buying into the Brock Bowers generational tight end type of narrative. I think that there are people that will buy into it. And like I said, I'm not saying that Brock Bowers is not going to be a good player. I think he's going to be a great player. But the value at tight end 2 right now is almost as high as it can get. I mean, there's only one more spot for him to go. He has to pass Sam Laporta. And at that point, he is tight end 1. And there is going to be no more room for him to go up. So somebody to consider trading as well, but I prefer that type of tier down move that I was talking about earlier. Now, that is all I have for you guys today. If you did enjoy the video, go ahead and hit that like button. Best free way to show this channel some support. Also, make sure you guys are subscribing, hitting the notification bell. That way you guys catch all of the videos on this channel from me, Adam, Nick, all of our group videos. Lots of Dynasty content coming, hitting you in your head top. Now, if you guys want some additional Dynasty content from me, I haven't mentioned it since we've gained a lot more new subscribers from the NFL Draft, but I do make content on my own channel at the League FFB on YouTube. You can find me making Dynasty content over there 3 to 4 times a week as well. So come over there, check me out, see what we're all about. Would love to have you guys over there, and let me know you came over from the BDGE channel. With all that out of the way, I will see you guys on our next video. Until then, though, peace out.